Hello, everyone. Joe Samyeg here, along with Matthew Bro. Definitely have a very exciting show to discuss MotoGP, and we'll start with the NASCAR Cup Series at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Big shout out to calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You two can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution. Link in the video description. And be sure to use the chat room, share your questions, comments, opinions with us, especially as we discuss NASCAR. Matthew, NASCAR Cup Series, round of 8, one race down, two more to go. The biggest story is not about the playoffs, though, I feel. It has to be about Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, lap 94. The two of them make contact with what appears to be hard race, and Kyle Larson say he was racing aggressively hard on PRN, the Performance Racing Radio Network, after the crash. He said he slid into Bubba Wallace. The two of them made contact. Bubba hits a turn, four wall, exiting the corner. Then he goes down, collects Kyle Larson near the bottom of the apron. That shoots Larson up across the front stretch, collects Bell, hits the outside wall. Bubba Wallace head on into that outside wall across the front stretch. Both of them hard hits. Both of them were okay. Both of them climbed out of the vehicle, but then Bubba Wallace came over to Kyle Larson, said a few words, couple shoving moments. Kyle Larson tried to shove him back a little bit. Then the safety crews intervened, breaking them up. Bubba didn't have a whole lot to say, neither did Kyle Larson, but the two of them got a lot of people talking about this. And overall, we know retaliation is part of NASCAR racing. We've seen it at various tracks, whether it's on pit road and two drivers fighting it out, on the track, a bump and run, dump and run. This one, do you feel this move by Wallace crossed the line, especially considering how the two of them crossed the track, hit hard, all the safety talks, and in the past prior to this car, we've seen this kind of accident can sometimes lead to some worse injuries.
I think this definitely has crossed a line today, and I think we have seen a lot of stuff and like a lot of intentional wrecks over the past couple years. Obviously, Ben Rhodes intentionally wrecking, which I believe Christian Eckes at Texas, that was extremely uncalled for too. No penalty came from that. William Byron intentionally wrecking Denny Hamlin this year, no penalty after being appealed. So I think this definitely crosses a line, especially under the circumstances we saw today. I believe Kyle Larson is in the wrong in the sense of he drove aggressively. He admitted it. I think this is what we show the difference between Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson is Kyle Larson admitted that he was wrong in the situation, but it wasn't as wrong nearly as what Bubba Wallace did coming out of turn four, hit run up into the wall. Not a lot of contact if there was any, but then just whether his steering broke, which I guess we're going to have to see. NASCAR can tell whether he put the throttle when he hit Larson at 156 miles per hour, 80. Just I saw some posts that it was at 156. Still horrible, obviously, still very fast. But like he said, there was a steering issue when he just went straight down, intentionally hit the right rear quarter panel, wrecked Kyle Larson. Larson's lucky that Christopher Bell was there to, I guess, bring in some of that damage that happened, because Kyle Larson would have went head on too, or right in the back. Sorry, I believe that wouldn't have been good, especially with the safety issues. Bubba Wallace was a big talker about the safety issues with this car, and this, I feel like that's just wrong on so many levels. And I've been here. I am somebody who has eaten a Big Mac on TikTok and dumped Dr. Pepper all over myself on Matt. I think Matt Bro NASCAR. If you want to follow me on TikTok, follow Grid Network though. That's more important. But done that before, right? And then I hear Joe giggling, but done that. But this should be a penalty. Absolutely, it should be. I believe at least 75 or 100 owners points, drivers points, and at least a $100,000 fine. I don't believe this warrants a suspension solely because it would just show how inconsistent NASCAR has treated every single thing that has happened this year. Noah Gragson at Road America, different circumstance wrecks, causes a 13-car melee over dollars in damage, gets 30 points and $35,000 fine. But now you can't go and suspend Bubba Wallace because of that, because you can rewrite the precedent, right? But why would you rewrite the precedent towards the end of a season instead of starting it off in 2023? So there's a lot of things I can say. Just very unfortunate, but we've seen wrecks in the past. The energy, people were excited back in the 70s, 80s, 90s before I even existed when fights and when wrecks would happen. But now all of a sudden, it's just the worst thing that ever happened in the sport, especially since obviously just wrecking people it's dangerous, especially with this new next gen car. We've seen 2 injuries, sideline drivers for multiple races that didn't even look bad, and now you have somebody getting hit on the right rear quarter panel at 100 into the wall before a playoff driver who's also a TRD driver ultimately blocked it and took in all the momentum and ended his day as well. But that's a lot what I have to say. I think there's more we can discuss, but I want to hear from you, Joe. I apologize for my little rant, but that's just how I feel in terms of what the penalty should be, because we didn't see it. Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, all of them should have been suspended then if we want to consider this a suspension worthy penalty, I feel.
A lot of good points. Before I answer a couple comments in the chat room from Adam, the move by Bubba Wallace crossed the line easily. Yes, for a penalty, don't know what it will be. And Ben Schneider, I think it's time to start sending a message. Never been a fan of intentional wrecking, regardless of the situation, retaliation or not. Local dirt track penalty penalizes folks for less than NASCAR seems to. Now, great points by everyone. One of the big things, especially considering all the talk about the safety lately with the accidents that occurred with Kurt Busch and then Alex Bowman, at a 1.5-mile speedway, I think this was the wrong move to do by Bubba Wallace. Now, Bubba did say in a post-race interview he could have controlled the steering. Pretty sure NASCAR is going to really be investigating and see what was the steering input. One thing compared to when Carl Edwards sent Brad Keselowski airborne at Atlanta Motor Speedway years ago, Carl Edwards had bright white gloves. It was easy to see his hands turn. It doesn't appear we could see Bubba Wallace's hands, so maybe they've learned don't wear bright white gloves. Overall, this was hard racing, I feel. You get wrecked, your day is over. Yes, you're frustrated. Yes, you're angry. But here's the thing, too. Bubba Wallace has not been running up front as consistently as Kyle Larson. Bubba Wallace does not have the wins like Kyle Larson does. One of the things I feel you got to do at some point is stand up and say, hey, you're not just going to run me over. You're not just going to chew me up. Because let's say the steering was broken. Bubba Wallace goes into that infield grass. Done for the day. Kyle Larson continues on. He's not in the playoffs, but he could continue on, get a good finish. The way it was handled, I think could have been a lot better. Maybe end under a caution. Go ahead, just start making a point like we've seen a couple other drivers do, like at Texas when Denny Hamlin was led and Byron No, he did not appreciate getting spun out. Many other ways it could have been done. Larry McReynolds has said he is not a fan of the race car being used as a way to retaliate because now both those teams, the 45, the 5, they got a junk car, they got to repair, and they're behind the ball on that. So overall, I do see potentially a penalty coming for Bubba Wallace. I do agree with you, Matthew. I think it has to be points and a fine. To what level? I think 100 points and $100,000, especially since this was a super speedway. I think that's fair. I don't agree with a suspension just because if you suspend him, now we're getting to the point, okay, we're suspending him because this player to be a blatant accident. If we go to Miami, if some folks will remember, in the playoffs a few years ago, well, quite a few years ago actually, Kevin Harvick in the 29 made contact with Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch hit the inside pit wall. Appeared to be hard racing, but then afterwards in the press conference, when Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick were together while Jimmy Johnson was celebrating championship, Kevin Harvick said it there. He wrecked Kyle Busch because he was racing him, as he said it, dumb. Did it deliberately. We didn't see it at the time. I think this will just put NASCAR more of a gray area. We're going to start saying, hey, you wrecked somebody intentionally on the 1.5-mile ovals, we could suspend you. Now it becomes harder. NASCAR's going to have to prove it. Overall, it's an ugly situation when it comes to the consistency of NASCAR officiating and then this kind of mess. And one of the things I have to ask you in the follow up, Bubba Wallace, he said, the steering wasn't working. Let's say we saw when he hit, you could see that hood flap open up when he made contact with the all. So it was pretty significant enough. If we were to find out, okay, the steering was legitimately broken and there was nothing in Bubba's control, he just happened to hit Larson, was right there. Does this now become something about more hard racing this early on, only lap 94? Or does this become something more about a part breaking after that kind of contact? Because we've been talking about cheap parts. What's your take on that?
That's really a great question. I was like leaning in because I was a little laggy. I have Spectrum Internet in New York, so bear with me. But I think we're going to see something what happened 2 years ago. I'm not going to refer to what it is, but if this does find out to be Bubba Wallace actually had a steering issue, I think a lot of people are just simply going to ignore it. Like people aren't going to believe it because I think we've seen other things happen in the past. I'm not going to talk about that though, but we have seen how some fans react that once they see something happen, that's what happened, whether they just because they want to believe it. But for Bubba's benefit of the doubt, you gotta hope, right? I mean, you gotta hope that he's telling the truth, but it just didn't seem like it the way he acted in the interview. He's a very emotional guy, right? But he was, I mean, I would be upset too if I had one of the fastest race cars and had the car I won my second career race in a dominating fashion get totaled because of a steering issue. I think if that was the case, which I mean, it'd be really cool to see me get proven wrong. No, Kobe and I talk a lot about how every time we talk about penalties and stuff like that, something else happens, right? But for his benefit of the doubt, I think he's got to hope that he was telling the truth. But I feel like he would have been more emotional, Joe. I feel like he would have been like, "Oh, this was definitely a steering issue." But I don't think so. I mean, I think he showed me going off of what I had seen from Twitter, from Facebook, every single social media, and live on the air. I don't think it was a steering issue, but for his benefit of the doubt, NASCAR is probably going to hope it was a steering issue, or else he's going to be in deep trouble. And I think it's just very unfortunate for the 45 team. I mean, for him to be 5 points away from advancing into the round of 8 for the owners championship, right behind Daniel Suarez, who was 9th. So I believe he was 10th going into it, and having the possibility, having one of the fastest cars to win and even not make the playoffs, but make the championship 4 in the owners points, and to do something like this, if this in fact was a blatant act, is just, it's horrible. The words cannot describe how terrible that would be for him, for where he is in the sport at 29 years old. To answer your question, I think, excuse me, sorry, talking so much. I apologize, Joe. I'm getting a little stuffy. You got to get some black cherry sparkling water. Nonetheless, yeah, I guess that's really all. I think I answered your question. I do want to hear your follow up though, because that was a wonderful question.
The way I see it, I think you hit it on the head. Bubba Wallace was so angry, it's hard to believe that the steering just broke. I feel he would have been more, went up. I didn't mean to hit you the second time. That was the steering issue. Still, what the heck for that first contact? It seemed very much like he knew what he'd done. One of the things he probably learned from what Willie Byron made the mistake of in Texas was essentially saying, yeah, I hit him. I didn't mean to speed him out. You're not going to go on the air and say something like that. So, of course, well, the steering didn't work. In fact, if I recall, it was Matt Kenseth who said he thought steering or a flat tire caused him to get into Joey Logano at Martinsville. NASCAR investigated that, determined that was not the case. Matt Kenseth was suspended for one race. Big difference with that. That was a non-playoff driver going after a playoff driver and essentially ruining Logano's playoff chances. Two drivers, not in the playoffs, just racing each other really hard, maybe a bit too early, only lap 94, have this collision. And overall, I just think it's unfortunate it's going to overshadow, I think, the rest of this week. Everybody's going to be talking about this Monday throughout the week. And of course, Grid Live Encore. If there's any breaking news, pretty sure we'll update it. And then, of course, full report on Grid tonight. One of the big things I have to ask you, when it comes to essentially what we saw today between these two, this is another follow up. Does this change how now Bubba Wallace, assuming he's racing in Homestead, approaches each week? Because now it's like, okay, people are going to see you're not going to want to cross Bubba Wallace. Do you think this is going to change how people race him for good or worse?
I mean, you're hitting me with these phenomenal follow-up questions, Joe. I mean, I can't even prepare for something that great. But I think if he races, I want to point something out, though. I believe this, if he does get replaced and he does get suspended, I saw something, a reply to Matthew Burrow's tweet, who is a writer for some NASCAR media outlet. I apologize. And he said something, when's the last time that there was 2 replacement drivers in a season? So obviously Kurt Busch is out and Ty Gibbs is subbing for him. But then if somebody, say, John sub for Bubba Wallace if he was suspended, 2001 with Dale Earnhardt and Mike Skinner being replaced by Robbie Gordon and Kevin Harvick. Obviously different circumstances, but I want to point out if he does get suspended, that would be the first time in, I believe, 21 years since that happened. But I'm just trying to figure out how to word it, right? I think people are going to race Bubba differently. Yes, I feel like Chastain has been raced differently for what has happened with him versus Toyota, and then Denny Hamlin versus Hendrick, and pretty much Chevrolet as a whole. I don't know if it's hard to say now because I don't know if Bubba Wallace is going to be suspended. I don't think he will be, but it kind of showed that people, like a lot of people will say that drivers need to stick up for themselves, but then once they do in this manner, like shoving Kyle Larson with the shove that like took every pound of Bubba Wallace's body shoved right in the Kyle, that retaliation factor, it makes you wonder. Excuse me again. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm losing it here. It makes you wonder, right? What's going to happen, how they're going to drive against Bubba. He's stuck up for himself. We saw it, but now it seems like he's very hated for what he just did, especially towards the former champion who has a lot going on as well. And they're close friends too. That's another interesting thing is what we saw from 2 close friends here with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson. I don't know if they'll be hanging out after the race, but I think there's definitely some talks in the trailer that have happened since then.
Yeah, a lot of stuff happened. One of the big things, of course, way I see it, I think the drivers, they're going to see you can't just push around Bubba Wallace no more. Even if there was some talk that, okay, Bubba, he knows how to race. I'm not going to, mess around with him. I think there's still some drivers. He's not up front all the time. I'm just going to use him up a little bit, try to get going. Overall, I feel you got to, as a driver, stand up for what you are, a racing driver. You represent those sponsors on your fire suit, the team that hire you, all that. You can't just get pushed around by other drivers. Kyle Larson, he's not in the championship hunt no more. He don't need to be racing that hard on lap 94. He's still in the second stage, or no, correct? First or second stage. It's starting to blur to me. But
yeah, second, I believe.
Second stage, but yeah, still a whole lot of racing to go, and just took himself out. And we have Joshua Birch joining us now. Joshua,
hello.
We've been talking about Bubba Wallace and everything going on. He crossed the line.
So, yeah, I haven't been able to see the whole race, unfortunately, so I hope I'm not too loud. I'm on completely different equipment as I've had a Wi-Fi outage. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the race, but I did see the action on Twitter, and I have been reading all your comments as well over the past couple of hours. You can see I'm having to stand up, and the camera's shaking as well because it's not all that great, so I'm giving everyone a headache. In all honesty, yeah, he crossed the line. And I think, because you've been talking about throughout the show as well, about how he's been sick and tired of being the punch bag of everybody. We've seen it a lot this season and mainly last year as well, how much he was having problems on track as well with the other drivers sort of bullying him, forcing him off as well. I mean, they can come together when they think as well. That mistake identity, of course, remember back with the Black Lives Matter protests as well, and when we thought there was a noose in the garage as well, and the entire field rallied around him as well and gave him all the support needed. That is the wonderful side of NASCAR that showed the brothermanship as well and the spiritual side. But when it comes to on-track action, it's every man for himself, and they do treat him worse than everybody else. So a reaction like this was always going to happen, but I think he's definitely massively crossed the line here. And as you've been saying, a penalty is definitely fitting. And maybe you two, just quickly, I know you probably want to tell the other viewers, but enlighten me, what type of penalty is he likely to get for this? Is it going to be a ban from a race, or is it going to be a grid penalty in the next race? How severe on that scale are we planning to go? And I'm sorry for the wobbling. I'll try and fix that in a second.
Been interesting. I know we've been hearing some folks talking about points deduction. Matt and I sort of talked about like 100 points, maybe 100,000. In the chat room, Adam believes a one race suspension. Some folks feel like that's a bit too much. Some folks feel as much. We'll see as it happens. Ben Schneider, Brandon, and him will definitely be shining on this on Encore Show tomorrow, and of course we know you'll be there.
Yeah, but I will have time to watch the whole race back because hopefully, because we've lost internet at the moment as well. So I'm on data, and it's taking me a while to get it back working with the phone because I always have a problem with it. So I'll be fully prepped for tomorrow's wrap-up show when I'll discuss it in more detail as well.
Indeed.
I don't know why I'm rocking backwards and forwards. It's like a swaying effect as well with the tripod. It's because it's a headset and it's knocking it. So hopefully everyone can put up with it.
And then Matthew, you had a follow-up question. You said,
"Yeah, we'll think of how to word this question too." I mean, I guess this whole past couple hours have really been a blur in the sense of trying to really experience what just happened. And to answer Josh's question too, I don't think anyone in the NASCAR world knows what's about to happen. It could be nothing. It could be a one race suspension. It could be a rest of the season suspension. It could be 100 points. It could be 50 points. NASCAR has shown to be so consistently inconsistent, what Ben always tells us. And that's the most honest thing I've ever heard in my life is how NASCAR is consistently inconsistent. So it could really go. But what my question is going to be for both of you, so if you remember during COVID with iRacing with Bubba Wallace, and he you would say rage quit, right, is what the kids call it, and Blue Emu pulled their sponsor from him. Do you think Lados, McDonald's, DoorDash, I'm trying to think, Moneyline, Root Insurance, do you think any of them go to that far, that extreme to say, Bubba Wallace, we supported you, but we can't do this with your actions that have occurred today? I'll start with you, Josh, for that.
Yeah, I think it was a situation, was it, with the esports? Everyone was like, this is a bit far. I mean, why are we losing sponsors? I mean, that entire COVID year as well. Remember Daniel Aptos in Formula E lost his drive because he let somebody else drive in his esport car. So I think that was a whole crazy time as well when the world didn't know what was going on and everybody sort of wrote it off as, oh, it's a sponsor who just want to quick out, can't afford the cash, won't want to provide for the season, so backed out early. This time, however, there's a serious chance that he's going to lose quite a lot as well. I'm just seeing as well. I'm seeing him now at the moment attacking the driver as well on the board as well. Frustrations throwing his helmet down the line as well. I think McDonald's is going to want their advertising off their family-friendly business as well, family fast food. So they're going to go. He's in big trouble at the moment with all this as well. And I'm trying to have another look at the wreck because here it is. I've got it now on the wall. So yeah, it comes off the turn 4, just drives him down into the infield section as well, purposely making contact. It was a huge accident. And as we've been saying as well, to add in, to deliberately cause a crash in these new generation of NASCAR, when we're talking about it yesterday on the show as well, with the reason that Kurt Busch has had to retire as well with injury. We keep seeing these. You cannot risk to deliberately crash someone when the cars are this unstable. You cannot risk putting another driver in harm's way. And for Bubba to do that, yes, frustrations, yes, anger and all that doesn't matter. You put a driver purposely in the wall in these type of cars that you yourself in the past have said, how long is it going to take until someone gets injured to change the cars? You purposely then go and do that? No, I think I agree with Adam on the basis here that it's going to be a one race suspension, possibly even a rest of season ban that removes him from the whole season as well, because there's been a lot of anticipation and nervous energy around the NASCAR paddock this year as well with all those car problems, and to see that, I don't agree with it at all.
One of the things this reminds me of was when Kyle Busch, driving a truck series race, was put into the wall by Ron Hornaday and Texas Motor Speedway. And under full course caution, safety car period, pace car, Kyle Busch deliberately put Ron Hornaday in the wall. After that, we saw NASCAR park Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch admitted to doing that, saying he wasn't going to put up with getting put into the wall. What did NASCAR do? They suspended him for the rest of that weekend, so he missed the Cup Series race. And what happened with M&M's? M&M said, hey, we're not coming back for the rest of the year. We're not happy with this. Now, M&M's did come back at the beginning of the next season. The big help was Interstate Batteries, very loyal to Joe Gibbs Racing, stepped up to sponsor Kyle Busch for the remainder of that season. Honestly, with this crash, especially if it's 100% determined that there was no steering issue for Bubba, this was retaliatory, I anticipate the fine, I anticipate the penalty. I think it's going to be on the higher side. But when it comes to the sponsors, there might be a sponsor that will say, hey, we don't condone this. Will they absolutely leave? I don't know if they're gonna fully leave on the level where we see what Interstate Battery had to do and step up because M&M says we're done for the rest of the year, but they go back the next year. I think if any sponsor was to be concerned, maybe McDonald's, because the McDonald's colors were on the car today. Everyone's gonna be replaying that clip over and over and over. However, I feel McDonald's, they've been around the sport a while. They know it is just something where these accidents occur. Well, incidents, excuse me, not accidents. And I recall when Carl Edwards took out Brad Keselowski and Brad Keselowski nearly went to the catch fence on Atlanta, I felt that was a much more egregious action. NASCAR parked Carl Edwards, no sponsor trouble. I'm feeling it should be the same for Bubba Wallace, just in much different circumstances. And we got a couple comments in the chat room. Chrome Diesel, Wallace versus Larson is the worst thing to happen this season after lots of problems this year, like safety, officiating, manipulating, and many more. And then Seth, Shane, the Bubba incident overshadowed what was actually a pretty darn good race. Also, Logano in the money in a top spot. What a drive. Overall, this was just some of the things that has overshadowed essentially this race. As we were mentioning, Joey Logano got a win. He is now going to Phoenix, contending for the championship. His second championship, if he could get that, because he's won it once already in this playoff format. Nobody picked him to win this race weekend for pick a winner, but we all agreed he would be up there. Matthew, starting with you, now with a win, how does Logano change his approach entering the next two races?
First thing I want to say is, unfortunately, I picked Denny Hamlin, but if you go to my Instagram where I do the pick of 4, I usually pick 4. Joey Logano was one of my 4 picks, and I believe Denny Hamlin. I picked Bubba Wallace, but last place is going to kill my average. But I think Joey Logano's got to drive just kind of like what I feel today. I don't think Chase Elliott did on purpose, but just like you didn't hear much about him. He was just chilling, minding his own business, trying to get – I don't remember the last truck race as well. I believe it was at Talladega, right, where you didn't really hear much of anything from Ty Majeski. So after him clinching into the Final Four. So you just got to survive really to make it. I mean, that's a lack of better terminology for me saying that survive, especially with all the safety issues in the sport. But Joey Logano's just – he's one of the best in the sport. We've seen it. I mean, Mark Martin was there in person today seeing sliced bread win this race in dominating fashion. I want to give credit to Ross Chastain, too. What an absolute show we saw in those last 15 laps that unfortunately will be overshadowed by the incident we had seen previously. But I think Joey Logano's just got to go out there and just do what he's got to do, right? I mean, we've seen this playoffs have been one of the most chaotic. We almost saw Chase Briscoe today win and make the Final Four after statistically being the worst driver to ever make the round of 8, and he almost made the championship 4 today, and a fascinating drive from him as well. I just think go out there and just keep doing what he's got to do. I don't think he needs to let off, but I think since he's guaranteed he should just get that sponsorship on TV. I mean, he's never won a race, though, without Shell or Pennzoil on the car. Very interesting fact to look into, that out of all the sponsorship, all the years Joey Logano has been in the top level of the Cup Series, I don't believe he has ever won a race without Shell or Pennzoil on the car. But I think he's just got to go out there and do what he's got to do. I'm going to keep saying that. Do what you got to do in order to succeed and get to the Final Four. And Joey Logano's been a threat every single year these playoffs have existed. Every single even year, for that fact. I believe, well, I don't know when it dates back to, but Toby Christie posted something. 22, 20, 18, 16, I believe 14 were all years Joey Logano made the Final Four. So he's pretty good with those even number years, especially in the 22 car, year 22. I don't see how I think he can get it done too, but that's for another day.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'll answer this one about Joey Logano because unfortunately I did miss quite a lot of the race thanks to the internet. I was keeping up as well. I literally got a message at 12:15 my time, and it all came in at once from the Grid Network chat as well. So I was reading through it as well, and I've suddenly realised, oh, the show's on early as well, and mad rush to get through, and because I couldn't see the race unfortunately. But I'll answer this about the Joey Logano. Yeah, this is going to give him a big boost now into the final couple of races. It sort of gives him the extra kick he needs, as you were saying as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can deliver. A race win here today as well, out of the blue from our predictions as well. I think I had, who did I have? Was it Elliott or Briscoe today? It's one of the two. I think I went for Briscoe actually. So I got close to me in fourth place. But yeah, this is going to be good now for Logano. How many races left now on the calendar? There's about 7 off my count, or is there less?
I think 3.
3?
3 races.
This is what happens when you've done 5 night races in a row. You just miss what days we're even on anymore. So last 3 races, yeah, he's going to mount a championship charge now as well. This is going to give him the big boost he needs as well. Proves how much I've been having to keep up with other sports at the moment as well. I may be watching, but the calendar's just gone over the head. I can't believe where are we? Mid-October here on my motorsport calendar, which you've never actually seen before. So just give me a second. It's a very nice one up here as well. It's a Gilles Villeneuve painting as well. It's the Canadian Grand Prix 1978 when he won it as well. That's this month's calendar trophy as well, because usually I'm sat down. But yeah, I think Logano's going to now go for it for the last couple of races. It's going to give him the boost he needs in terms of confidence, and he's been strong all year. We know that. In the regular season, he was really, really quick, and playoffs, he's taking the time to come in. Now into the round of 8, looking good.
Looking good for the round of 8, and he has to look good for Phoenix. He's always seemed to be one of the drivers. If he's in the championship for it, he's not somebody to just, he's in there, but he doesn't have a real chance. If he's in there, he has a legitimate chance. One of the famous moments, of course, when he got into the championship 4 by pushing, out-muscling Truex at Martinsville, and Martin Truex was saying he may have won the war, but he's not going to win the battle, or the opposite way around. But then at Homestead, who won it all? Logano, second place, Truex. So overall, I think Logano has to be one of the favorites entering. And Adam saying Logano wants his second championship. It's crazy with this format. A second championship has become so elusive, so hard. We saw Jimmy Johnson get 5 in a row in NASCAR before this playoff era, at least this elimination. I don't think we're ever going to see anyway get 5 in a row with this format. Not going to happen.
Where's Ben when you need him to have a controversial opinion, as always?
And then and then overall playoffs, Logano, he's in. Chastain's 18 points above the cut line. Elliott 17, Hamlin 6. Outside, William Byron, he has 6 points below the cut line. Briscoe 9 points, and Blaney 11 points below the cut line. Christopher Bell, of course, caught up with the Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson crash. He is 23 below. And here's the thing. Those stage points, when it comes to Ryan Blaney, he scored 16 points today. If he had not scored those stage points, he'll be at negative 27 behind Christopher Bell. Still, 20 stage points before the race finishes. So Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney, they're not in a must-win situation, but they're in a situation where those stage points will really help, but they really should be looking for those wins. Matthew, do you believe any of those two drivers, Bell or Blaney, could get in by just taking the stage points, even if they don't get a win?
I think absolutely. And I think what we had seen from the previous rounds with, I wouldn't say excuses from drivers, but everyone said, oh, well, I would have raced differently if I knew that this was going to come down to the points here. I would have tried for more stage points. And I think now we're going to see every driver that is not Logano, whether it's Chastain, Elliott, Hamlin, Byron, or Bell, going to drive every stage like it's the last stage of the race to get those points. I think there could be a huge point swing. I mean, one error can change the entire outlook of the playoffs. Like we almost saw Chase Elliott get eliminated in, was it the round of 12? Had a terrible first race. I can't think where, was it Darlington? Had a terrible first race at one of the tracks, right? And just was like near the cut line. So you can see something quick like that. Chastain might have had a phenomenal drive today. One bad incident could put Chastain way out of it too if he doesn't get the points you need. I think the fan and everyone wants to see Blaney somehow make it without winning and wants to see Bell because of the dominant drive he's had, especially one of the highest point earners out of all the drivers throughout the playoffs. I think they could easily get in. I want to see the next two races, whether at Homestead or Martinsville. I believe, yeah, Martinsville. I want to see the other two playoff drivers win, so we have that final spot. And that would be one. I think the TV ratings will finally see a boost that they have not seen this year. If that's the perfect ideal for NASCAR, right? Having one driver get in one spot remaining for 5 drivers, like that's incredible that we would all love to see. And I think that's obviously what they want. And I think that can definitely happen considering the next couple tracks that are coming up here with Homestead and Martinsville. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, though. I think those are the two. I don't know if I'm referring to an older schedule nonetheless. But yeah, so I think they can definitely point their way in. And what we've seen this season is Bell is more likely to go out and win rather than Blaney. But I think Blaney, if he stays consistent, will sneak his way in to the Final Four. And then maybe pull a Daniel Hemrick from last year, which would be a pretty fascinating thing to see. But that's all I got to say about that one.
Yeah, one of the things, I think you hit it right on the head. Bell, I think he's more likely to get the win. Blaney, he could be the sneaky one, get in by the points, because one driver will for sure get in by the points. And then as we wrap up the NASCAR portion of this program, one of the big things, Hendrick Motorsports, the highest finishing one was Noah Gragson, just outside the top 10, 11th. Chase Elliott, 21st. Nothing. William Byron, I believe he got 1 stage point in the first stage. Didn't have a great race at all. They just didn't seem like anywhere as great as they were, especially last time we were here in Las Vegas where Bowman got the win. Do you believe this is a concern for Hendrick Motorsports? Because Byron is 6 below. Chase Elliott, he's still in a comfortable spot, but he's 3rd in the playoff grid right now because of the win. Do you think there'll be a little bit concerned heading to Miami? Because if they don't get in Miami, it's Martinsville.
I think the best thing for them is to just remain calm and realize who they are, and that's Hendrick Motorsports. I find it fascinating, though, that if Kyle Busch didn't wreck, Hendrick Motorsports wouldn't have like any stage points because of William Byron, pretty much getting into 10th because of Kyle Busch spinning out. And I mean, let's talk about Kyle Busch a little later. What a fascinating day for the worst luck in NASCAR. Broke the record for most incidents, I believe, in a single season for like Toby Christie's tracker. 26 racing incidents this season for Kyle Busch. Man, it's finished there. Completely different. I am so sorry for going off track. But I wouldn't be concerned, really. I'd be a little concerned that Noah Gragson came in and had the best day out of all your drivers. Chase Elliott was essentially non-existent. I'm losing my mind, guys. Goodness gracious. William Byron wasn't running terribly, but got the 1 stage point in stage. And then who else is on Hendrick? See, Larson, obviously we can't. Yeah, so.
It's been a super long day. Don't worry about it.
For you, what time is it where you are, Josh?
It's 1 a.m. just gone. So I've been up a long time, considering 24 hours ago was the Moto3 race start now. So that's how weird it is. It's the same day for me, but the race for Moto3 was 24 hours ago already. And to me, it's still the same day. It's weird. That's because that's my sleep schedule.
See, that's like people watching at home, first time viewers. That's dedication right there. Like, I just want to admit that. But yes, I definitely like I'd be sleeping at 1 a.m. to be honest with you. But yeah, I wouldn't say this is much of a concern, Joe. I think maybe you have a differing opinion here, but when you have some of the best drivers in the sport here with Chase Elliott, William Byron's one of the most consistent drivers we've seen, and then Noah Gregson's arguably the best Xfinity driver. I wouldn't be too worried if I was Hendrick Motorsports.
No, I completely agree with you. We don't have different opinions at all. I wouldn't be too worried. Keep your head cool, as you say. Remember who you are as well, and just know and have confidence in each other. They need to work together as a team and focus on the bigger goals as well. And Hendrick Motorsport, some of the biggest names in NASCAR, if not the biggest as well. Penske might come after me after saying that, but honestly, I think they just keep calm and carry on. That's a British motto if you ever need one as well. I think we're going to see some fireworks in the last couple of races. And I know I'll try and hop on a couple with USON as well to call them. And I can't wait because this is the first year. As last year, I was sort of in and out of NASCAR quite a bit. This year, probably throwing myself in, tried to watch so many races, commentated on a lot of them, commentated a couple with you as well, Joe, together as well. And I'm just really, really enjoying it. It's such a fantastic format. And I do agree as well. I've always said it as well, even before dedication watching, that the playoff system is so confusing. How is it supposed to help the casual fan understand? Because I consider myself in NASCAR terms a casual fan. And I can't understand it. So yeah, it's kind of having the opposite effect. But that's for me and Ben to talk about tomorrow as well. I don't know if you're joining us as well, Matthew. Are you joining us tomorrow?
Ben will be there, and in fact, Ben is now in the chat room. He
says,
of course. On that note, I will say this: I hold the playoff system responsible for a lot of the controversies we've seen, the over-aggression, driver retaliation. Definitely, when you're in a must-win situation, and you could just, as Eric Jones said about Chase Briscoe, plow your way to the front, it makes it where it's not fun for drivers, but it does make it where for the casual fan, they're seeing a lot of mayhem on the track, stuff that makes them talk, whether they think it's exciting or they think it's a bit childish. And of course, the playoff system, well, we'll leave that for maybe GRIDnet Encore if we want to just chat
more.
Yeah,
whole hour.
One last NASCAR question from the chat room. I'll throw this to you first, Matthew. Do you believe there's a lack of respect in racing today?
I think, well, one thing I want to point out is Ben always likes to just wake up and speak facts. I mean, definitely Ben's one of the best at it. And then this is an excellent question too by Casey. I feel like, yes, absolutely. From what we saw at the Roval, whether it was Austin Cindric or Chase Briscoe, just like, well, I want to get on because of this playoff system. And I don't care. The safety concerns that NASCAR drivers like to preach about and what we like to preach about, when it comes to getting that extra however many $1,000 bonus getting into the next round of the owners and playoff championship, that just goes out the window, gone. Just no one cares. I really think there is a lack of respect for racing. And I think a lack of respect and sometimes with drivers against each other, which you could say that maybe Larson had a lack of respect of Bubba running him up high. I think Larson got loose. That's a whole different conversation. But yes, definitely. That's a great point, Casey, in the chat room. I think there is definitely a lack of respect in racing today. And I think I only can really speak from the NASCAR side of things, but I think Josh could probably answer it from every other racing series that exists in terms of the lack of respect.
I'll tell you where the only respect, the biggest respect in racing at the moment I see is in the British Touring Car Championship. That is where I see the biggest respect in any form of motorsport. Formula One, it is fractured. We may see the copycat thing that you see as well in terms of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, but there's racing respect there, but there's no real respect because everyone's out for each other. Formula 2 and Formula 3 might be another exception along with British touring cars, but at that level as well, you're fighting with each other. MotoGP, there's a lot of rivals in there as well. And I think there's a respect for the cause and for safety, but there's not a respect for the racing. We saw that today with, I won't say, Marquez and Miller. Not Mark, Alex, but we'll get onto that in Joe's questioning. I think in the W Series there's some respect, but it's getting a bit toxic in there now. There's a couple of mechanics who don't go along with a couple of the drivers as well. And I think in Formula E, it's Hazel Southwell's probably better to talk about that than me, having been in the paddock as well. But Formula E seems to be struggling at the moment in terms of its own identity. And I think NASCAR as well, we've seen today, there's not a respect there as well. IndyCar, I would argue there's a brotherly respect there, but it's sometimes it ends up a bit bad. I think Pato Award this year proves that they make a lot of enemies, so does Romain Grosjean. I think, the best three I can think of, British Touring Car Championship, that's right on top. They love and respect each other. It's like a big family that travel around the UK. There's a lot of respect there. Formula 2 and Formula 3, there's a good level of respect because all the drivers eat together. They sleep in the same hotel together. They travel together as well, no matter what team you're in. I think that's it. But in the top flight formulas, no. There is a big problem with respect as well. And I think you need respect in racing as well. Otherwise, the entire thing just goes out because, yes, you can have rivalries, but every rivalry is deep down a great respect of the two. Prost and Senna, fierce rivals, respected the two as well. And that's what you need. Respect goes hand in hand with rivalry. And at the moment, it's just rivalry, nothing else.
Rivalry and just trying to get the best you can, whether it's a win. I would agree with you. I feel IndyCar, they seem to have a brotherhood there, but there's still their rivals on some drivers that don't get along with others, and that'll be everywhere. I feel one of the big things, especially in American stock cars and the short tracks, we've seen some of the chaos that occurs at Bowman Gray Stadium. There's really a lack of respect there. Some other short tracks, we know there are just some rivals, pure hatred. Here, it's really gotten to the point where because these cars technically are safer compared to 1994, I think, well, for sure what happened today with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson, and that happened in 1994 when it was concrete walls with those prior generations car, both drivers would have been lucky to climb out of that vehicle, and we'll be really saying that was a boneheaded, dumb move, probably a racing ban. But now these cars are getting safer, so the risk and the reward, especially, especially those last generation cars seem to be really, really safe. They'll just throw it in there. Hopefully we get up front, get a good finish. Might be banged and bruised, but, the ultimate danger was not there. And I feel that's one of the big driving factors. The safety's going up. The drivers, especially in American stock cars, are seeing this, so they're getting more and more aggressive, getting more risky, taking those risks. There's not a whole lot of taking anymore. No, excuse me. There's not a whole lot of giving anymore, but there's a lot of taking going on the track. And I think you don't see that so much when it comes to IndyCar. You don't see that so much when it comes to other forms of racing. I remember when some people were critical of Marc Marquez, as you mentioned, of how he's very aggressive. And we saw a little bit of that. But of course, we know he's coming back from an injury, so maybe he was not 100%, but we've seen him being physical, just throw the bike in there. He doesn't care who you are. Get out of my way. I'm Marc Marquez. I got a championship to chase. So very great question from Casey about the lack of respect. I think there is a lack of respect compared to when it was more of a brotherhood, the camaraderie of, we're all in this one big family. I think we all still care about each other in an aspect where nobody wants to see another driver get hurt. We saw everyone come together for Bubba Wallace at Talladega. If something was to occur again, I bet they will all rally behind Bubba Wallace again. But overall, I think when it comes to being on the track, there seems to be a little lack of respect. One big thing in NASCAR, well, overall, good race, the excitement, all the attention turned to Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson. Matthew, what a phenomenal MotoGP race. And we understand your first time watching MotoGP Phillips Island.
Oh, and absolutely. I want to just say, if you guys do not follow, if you guys are real NASCAR fans and you're sticking around here, MotoGP was such a fascinating experience for me. I was talking to Joe backstage, 27 laps. I was like, man, that didn't feel like enough. I was waiting. I'm like, Marc Marquez in the podium going on. I was excited. I really recommend expanding your knowledge of motorsport and really tuning into not only stock car racing, open wheel racing, motorcycle racing. It was fascinating. But let's get into one of the best shows I think I have seen in a very long time. And it was a very exciting MotoGP Australian Grand Prix left many, including myself, wanting more laps. But Alex Rins was happy the race ended at lap 27 as he led the last lap and ultimately won. So it's possibly the last win for Suzuki in MotoGP, which is very, very interesting here. Also want to point out what we pointed out on the pre-race show yesterday, the 100th podium for Marc Marquez when he finished second place. Another driver finished on the podium, Pecco Bagnaia, third place, led at the start of the final lap, but got muscled out of the way with some aggressive driving here. But now Pecco leaves with a 14-point lead, which he really needed after Quartararo exited the race very early. So now he outscores Fabio Quartararo by 11 points in the next round. And I apologize, if he does outscore Quartararo, I'm getting so excited about MotoGP, I'm a little ahead of myself, guys. But if he does outscore Quartararo by 11 points in the next round, he becomes the MotoGP World Champion. And like I had just previously mentioned, Fabio Quartararo lost the front end and crashed out of the race while running outside of points, while I was also running somewhere else. I missed one lap of this race, and it happened to be that. So I will start with you, Josh. Is Quartararo's reign as world champion, did we see it come to an end?
Well, do you know, me and Megan were commentating on the race, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning here in the UK. So Megan was very much like, but she got into the spirit of it quite quickly, and I just hadn't slept and still haven't. But in terms of it, I thought it was absolutely fantastic because Quartararo, first of all, he made the mistake coming to turn 4, where it was raining in the warm-up session and it was drying out throughout the day, and he just hit one little wet patch in the braking zone, locked the rear of the bike, almost had a high side, and just drifted straight on down into the escape road, losing out a crucial position as well. Now, what that meant was he was put back into 22nd position and had to start fighting his way back up. But as you said, the one lap you missed, turning into turn 2 at the Southern Loop as well. So I thought something was flying outside my window. It's a bat. It's 1 a.m. It's Batman. So anyway, Batman couldn't even say Fabio Quartararo with his utility belt. Coming through turn 2, the front buckles in, straight off into the gravel. Numpois on points as well. In the last 5 races, he's failed to score 3 times. It's unbelievable as well for Fabio. In the Asia series as well, he has failed to score. He got, I think, 8 points no points in Thailand, 8 points in Japan. That was it. No points finishing out the last 2, and he didn't have one in the race before either in Aragon. So he's really struggling now. When we went into Austria a couple of months ago, after the summer break, he was 66 points clear of Bagnaia, who was 4th in the standings. Now, with 2 races to go, he is 14 points deficit to Bagnaia. Bagnaia has been absolutely unbelievable, and I think he's going to be an absolute charge the rest of the season. He can wrap it up next time out, as you said. All he's going to need for that is the 11 points difference as well in Maylasia. But personally, guys, this is going down to the end of the season in Valencia.
I think it might come down to an end at Maylasia. I think, especially those 2 long straightaways, that's going to favor Ducati. I just don't have the confidence. I feel I lost the confidence in Fabio Quartararo to get a top 5 just because of the streak he's had. And like you said, the big collapse from over 90 points. I remember we were here talking, is it over or Pecco Bagnaia?
Yeah.
And now this will be the biggest comeback, I think, this year in motorsports. I can't think of anything, especially in the grid ranking series. This will be huge. But yeah, I think it's coming to an end for Quartararo's
Willpower? Ranking. What about Willpower? What do you think about Willpower's comeback? That was quite good in IndyCar.
That was good. He led the points for quite some time. The consistency was really key. Where the winning streak, from I think just 1 win, and he's 90 points back to win after win after win. Just amazing effort by Pecco.
And a follow-up question for both of you who understand MotoGP far more than myself, and maybe some of the viewers who stuck around for NASCAR. So when you say he has failed to score points in 3 of the last 5 races, can you define like the point system of MotoGP and how that works versus like Formula 1 and NASCAR?
Yeah, so if you for the race winner as well, it's a simple old school format of most points at the end of the season is the world champion as well. So for first you get 25 points as well. For second, you get 20 points. Third, you get 18. Fourth is 15, and then it's so on until you get to 15th position where you score one world championship point. So you just take a couple off each time as well to get down to that running order. So this is why with Quartararo not scoring in the last two races as well due to accidents, he's effectively lost 50 points in the championship, 50 possible points going forward on as well. And Bagnaia came through 4 victories in a row, so that's 100 points he got back as well. He closed that gap up, and then in the last couple of the flyaway races, ever since Aragon, it's been to and fro who's been taking the championship. In Japan, it was Bagnaia who crashed out, and Quartararo was able to get a 9-point advantage. And then in Thailand and now here in Australia, Quartararo's failed. Bagnaia's picked up the points and now moved 14 ahead. By logic, Bagnaia's going to have a bad race in Malaysia, probably, which means we're going to have a great season finale in Valencia. So there's only 50 points available now, and realistically, 3 people in the title fight of Bagnaia, Quartararo, and Maylasia Spargo. And somehow, Joe, Maylasia Spargo is still in that mix as well throughout the season.
Amazing that he's still in the mix. Just barely. Same with Enea Bastianini, I believe, is 42 behind. So
yes, yeah.
He needs everybody to finish 15th or lower to have a shot at it. But amazing stuff. And yeah, top 15, everyone else, no points.
And it's crazy to think the top 15 gets points. So if you fail to finish in the top, it's a very large range where you can get into. It's incredible. But something again, for the people who don't watch MotoGP, I strongly recommend looking up the 2022 Australian Grand Prix, because this race was close start to finish, second closest top 10 finish, and the closest top 7 finish we have ever seen with MotoGP. Nobody could simply pull away, and everyone was packed up like Moto3, or comparing to what some of us are familiar with, NASCAR at Talladega. So Joshua, for you, why was nobody able to pull away at this track?
Well, we had an unusual circumstance where this isn't normal for this track, where people can't pull away. We have a couple of laps where they're very close, and then we start to see breakaway groups. But because of the wind here today as well, and at different parts of the track, it was more gusty than others as well. It's literally a coastal circuit. It's literally the end of the island we raced on the circuit. That's why it's called Phillips Island. So literally, we have the White Cliffs of Dover here in the UK. That is literally after turn 1, bang, it's the ocean right there along the island gap as well. So it is literally, you go about 90 minutes forward, you reach Antarctica. That's literally what I was hearing Gavin Emmett saying in the commentary box in my ears on BT Sport, that it's literally Antarctica straight ahead of you. So you get a lot of coastal breeze, you get a lot of cold air as well, and it was throwing the bikes around, much like my camera's moving around now. Actually, it was throwing the bike. Actually, I'm moving for it. It was throwing the bikes all the way around like that throughout the entire race. So nobody was able to pull away. We had Ducati, who are usually the fastest on the straights, not being able to pull the advantage because it was a headwind that was slowing them down and leaving a big pocket of air behind them for the likes of the Suzukis, the Aprilias, and the Hondas to gain slipstream on them straight up into towards turn 1. So it provided a strange situation where nobody could pull away. It was the same in Moto 3. Moto 2 used different type of machinery, so they did have gaps in their race. But for MotoGP, it was just full on like a crazy train. And the last lap as well, as you said, top 7, 0.887 separating the top 7, and the top 10 separated by about 1.3 seconds. The closest top 10 in MotoGP history, to add on to the 2 closest finishes we've already had this year in MotoGP history. With Bagnaia and Bastianini being 0.039 and 0.053 back in San Marino and Aragon.
It was just an absolute fascinating race from start to finish. It had the championship, right? It had 5 racers coming in with the shot to win. Jack Miller, unfortunately, is out now with no points because of Alex Marquez entering the Miller corner, named after him, missed his braking point and took Miller out, unfortunately. Thankfully, he was okay, though, and it could have been much worse. Fortunately, we had is the long lap enough, though, and do you agree with that call, what happened during that incident?
Well, me and Megan were commentating obviously at the time, and I said Megan said immediately that he came in way too late. Alex Marquez, he almost had a high side, so the rear steps on him, picked up the bike, but he was carrying way too much speed, went straight on, and hit the back of Jack Miller. I said immediately that's going to be a penalty. Megan agreed. Megan suggested it could be a grid penalty for the next race. Instead, logically, they've used the long lap penalty option. So what that means is that at one part of the track as well, at the next venue, and at all venues this happens, there's an extra little, like in rallying, a joker lap as well, where the track is slightly longer, so you're made to take the long route once or twice if you breach it. How many times the stewards tell you must do it, to lose positions as well and add some race time onto your lap. So I think a long lap penalty is fair, but it was a very bad crash because Alex Marquez, who's brother to Marc Marquez, the younger brother, just came steaming in and whacked Jack Miller right in the back. And I thought Jack might have had a bit of a back problem actually when he was walking away, because he was sort of laid stationary for a few moments, but it was a very, very nasty accident as well. But I think long lap penalty is the least amount of damage they could have done. But then again, in Moto 2, we had Jorge Navarro be run over on his back, lied in the middle of the track for 3 laps and no red flags. So the stewards clearly don't know what they're doing anymore. So it could have been more, but they just don't care, it seems, as well. And that's angered a lot of the riders actually in the paddock, the fact that there was no red flag in Moto 2. But we'll have more on that tomorrow when after I've had a chance to talk with Simon Patterson. I'll have it up in the Grid Encore show as well.
And absolutely, though, I want to touch like this motorsport's very dangerous, right? And to see an incident like that occur is very horrible. But to see Jack Miller get up and walk away from it is one of the best sights we can see right at the end of the day. So no matter what motorsport it is. And then Joe, did you want to answer that question?
Oh, Joe, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I agree with that. Essentially, long lap I feel is good. I don't know what was going on in Moto 2. I was like, wait a second. He's still on the racetrack. This is crazy, but definitely I agree with you. And one comment from the channel from Adam, the MotoGP Championship is intense. Definitely, I agree with you. It's intense stuff we're seeing in MotoGP.
And then, I mean, intense is probably one of the best ways to describe it. So now Pecco Bagnaia leads Fabio by 14 points, Alexi by 27, and I believe it's Anea. These names are very difficult for somebody.
Bastianini.
Okay. But only 50 points are left, like Joshua had previously mentioned. And Pecco needs to outscore Alexi Anea by, and that's it. Nothing can be done. I apologize. And if Pecco finishes 6th place or worse for Fabio, I'm so sorry. I can't read. If Pecco wins 6th place or worse for Fabio, it's over. The MotoGP World Champion. Yeah. So does the MotoGP Championship get wrapped up in Maylasia? I apologize for that for the people at home. I can't read.
No worries at all. Don't worry about it. It's confusing for me as well because we haven't worked out the permutations yet. Simply, Bagnaia, 11 points needed more than Quartararo to sort of wrap up the title as well. So I don't see the championship ending in Maylasia. It's just the way this season's gone. 1 minute we think it's completely over. The next minute it's back again. So I think this is going to go down to Valencia in 3 weeks' time. Or is it 2? No, it's 3 weeks' time from now. So, yeah, it'll go down to Valencia in the 6th of November. Joe, what do you think? Where are you? There you are.
I'm here. I still think it's just the way that track, the Malaysian circuit, Ducati. Maybe it's just I'm just too skeptical. I don't have the confidence in Fabio. I think it's going to be over. And the battle, I think, will be more for 2nd place, which, if you recall, 2 seasons ago when Fabio Quartararo was having that season collapse, the last race of the year, crashed out, fell well below the top 3, I believe 5th or 6th in the final standing.
Yeah.
So I'm just concerned that we're going to be seeing something like that from Fabio this next race, and the race after. Yamaha just looked really.
I'm trying not to get the thing. I don't know if you can see it, but there we go. Rain. It's going to rain in Kuala Lumpur. That's the long-range weather forecast. 2 o'clock, race start Sunday in Malaysia. torrential thunderstorm. Who fancies waiting with me next weekend? That's going to be another one. So, yeah, that's going to add a spice as well. Joe, you remember Formula One in Malaysia with the races and how crazy they can get. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, the time zones too. I know for me, MotoGP was 8 p.m. So I think it's going to be not too bad, Malaysia. So definitely, if Meg needs a sleep, I could be more than willing to.
Oh, welcome.
So-
Yeah, you're welcome up in the box anytime. Anybody is. I think Megan will enjoy that as well. But Megan's not with me in America next weekend for the US Grand Prix because of a clash with Doctor Who as well with the centenary special. So I'm pretty annoyed I have to miss it, to be fair, as well. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun next race weekend. I encourage everyone to subscribe to the GRIDnet right here. We'll get to Shining Moment shortly, but first, we want to just recap briefly the grid ranking stand-ins. Week 29, the big change we saw is MotoGP rider Fabio Quartararo fell out of the top 10 with his non-points finish, so Cam Walsh from Supercars gets in. Here is the full grid ranking. Of course, NASCAR Cup Series driver Chase Elliott fell down to 17th since he did not finish in the top 10. So this allowed Jamie Chadwick, Sergio Perez, Chaz Monster to move ahead. And overall, the grid ranking championship is already wrapped up. Shane Van Gisbergen, the 2022 champion, he'll be racing shortly. He still got 4 races left to go, so he could still get over 20 wins. Phenomenal effort by Shane Van Gisbergen in the Supercar Series. And of course, next weekend, Supercars, NASCAR. We got a lot of racing. Be sure to subscribe here and to Joshua's channel, link in the video description. With that said, time to the grid. One shiny moment. Starting with you, Joshua. What is your one shiny moment?
It is actually something that happened in Moto 3, so I can't say it on this program because that will go on the Encore show tomorrow. Otherwise, Ben will have a go at me. So I would choose a different one shining moment. I think it would be Alex Rins getting the possible last ever win for Suzuki going forward as well, and his first win in over 2 seasons. So well done, Alex Rins. A great race and thumbs up from me. That was a classic.
And I'm going to go on the NASCAR side for the people still here. I'm going to say a driver, but it's not going to be a driver who won. It's going to be the driver that finished on the podium in third. Kyle Rowdy Busch coming home track, Las Vegas. Obviously, bad news with his brother yesterday retiring from full-time racing. Kyle Busch had a spin out in stage 1, had a wheel fall off, which got me so people were booing. I'll never understand that in motorsport, why people will boo a driver. Or they were, sorry, not booing. They were cheering when Kyle Busch had this happen. And then Kyle Busch just was like, okay, let me finish third. So I think Kyle Busch finishing on the podium after the worst luck we have seen in NASCAR in a very long time in his last season with Joe Gibbs Racing definitely deserves a podium. Also, with wheel falling off suspension, Ben Bashore will no longer be his crew chief. And then if you're a Kyle Busch fan, and if you're a NASCAR fan with that issue going on between those two seeming not to be on the same page in terms of racing, it's a win-win for Kyle Busch today.
My shining moment is going to come from MotoGP as well. Marc Marquez, podium 100. What a ride. Up there in the front, this looked like the old Marc Marquez. Maybe not exactly 100% level, but what a great race. And overall, that Phillips Island Circuit, Australian Grand Prix, so excited it was back. Over 40,000 fans in attendance after being away from the calendar due to the pandemic and everything going on. Those fans were treating him for a great race. And the podium celebration, all 3 of them did shoeies, threw their boots, knee pads to the crowd. The crowd was excited. What a fun event. That was, like Matthew said, I wish there was more laps left because that was so much fun watching that race. And we hope everyone had fun this weekend watching all the motorsports content. Of course, Joshua will be back on the air tomorrow on Grid Encore with Ben, Casey, and Brandon. They're going to be recapping ARCA, Moto2, Moto3, the Xfinity Series, including Hailie Deegan's debut performance there. Wednesday Grid tonight. Cole will be there. I believe Joshua will be there as well too. Going to be discussing the biggest news in motorsports, including if there's any potential penalty for Bubba Wallace. Then Friday, the women in motorsports, myself, Daniel Zera from Racer the Girl Behind the Helmet, recap all the women racers this past weekend and some of the previews of the upcoming race weekend. Then we do it all over again with Grid Live pre-race Saturday and wrap up on Sunday. For Joshua Birch and Matthew Bro, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.